Please join me in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7. Luke, chapter 7. We're going to begin reading at the end of the chapter, verse 36. Luke chapter 7, beginning with verse 36. One of the Pharisees asked him to eat, that is Jesus, asked him to eat with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. Behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she had learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment. And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. And she wiped them with the hair of her head, and she kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner." And Jesus answering said to him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." And he answered, "Say it, teacher." A certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them will love him more? Simon answered, "The one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt." And he said to him, "You have judged rightly." Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little." And he said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." Then those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" And Jesus said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." As we look at a wonderful story like this that's very familiar to most of us, it's easy to be captivated by just the emotional context that is there. The things that are happening in this room are just captivating to the person as they read it, and they're just taken by the story. But I think what happens oftentimes in most places is that we miss the bigger context of what Jesus is trying to communicate. Who is this Jesus is the theme of our message today. Who is this Jesus? And this little text here is set within several stories that really kind of build up to this moment where this woman is anointing Jesus' feet. It doesn't just start with this Pharisee inviting Jesus to dinner. It actually starts right after Jesus gets done with Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount. And after he gets finished teaching, he ends up going to Capernaum. And in Capernaum, he is met with one of the centurion soldiers who has sent messengers to Jesus. "Will you come and heal my servant?" And so Jesus agrees to go and heal the servant of the centurion. And when he gets closer, he sends more messengers and he says, "Listen, don't come into my house. I'm not worthy for you to come in. But just say the word, because I too am a man under authority. I say come and people come. I say go and people go." In other words, what he's saying is, I recognize your authority. And I recognize that if you just say the word, it'll happen. And Jesus says, "Never before have I seen faith, even in Israel, as this." Then just a few minutes later, we see that he has entered the city of Nain. And as he enters Nain, he interrupts a funeral procession. And as they go to this funeral procession, it's a widow who has lost her only son, probably the person who would provide for her the rest of her life. And as the funeral is going on, Jesus stops everything. He interrupts the funeral and he resurrects the dead man and gives him his life back. In doing so, he gives the widow her life back. And the people are afraid and they look at this man, Jesus, and they say, "Who is this man? A great prophet has arisen among us. God has visited his people." So we see a Jesus who has great authority to heal from a distance. Jesus who has the ability to heal a dead, or to resurrect a dead man, and he is called a great prophet, and that's going to be a big deal here in a minute. And then we have this story where John the Baptist sends his disciples. John, who's in prison, has been faithful, and he sends his disciples to Jesus, and he says, Are you the one that we were looking for, or should we wait for another? In other words, what they're asking is, are you the Messiah? Are you the Messiah? And as he says, and as they ask this question, are you the one, or should we look for another? In verse 21 of chapter 7, it says something very interesting. It says, in that hour he healed people of diseases and plagues and evil spirits. And on many who were blinded he bestowed sight. In other words, Jesus is saying, yes, I am the Messiah. He does the miracles of the Messiah in that moment. And as we come to the end of all of these stories about Jesus and what he's doing, we see that he can heal from a distance. He has great authority. He's a great prophet, that he's the Messiah. But then he gives a little story about himself here. And he says, to what shall I compare the people of this generation? And what are they like? They're like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not weep. For John the Baptist has come eating bread and drinking, or eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say he has a demon. And the Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by all of her children. Jesus says, you all are so childish that we can send the messenger John the Baptist, and you go, he has a demon. Then the Son of God comes, and you say he's a glutton and a drunk, which he's not. They look at him, and they're just so childish that they don't like either one of the messengers that God sends to them. And then Jesus says these words that he's going to illustrate in this story. Yet wisdom is justified by all of her children. What does he mean by this? Well, I think what he's trying to tell us is we spend a lot of our mental capacity and a lot of our time trying to justify our actions and say that this is the right way to do things and this is the right way to live. But the wisdom of God is demonstrated not in what we think is important, but it's demonstrated through changed lives that believe in Jesus. That's what wisdom is. And so as we look at this story of this woman who anoints Jesus, we put it in a larger context. What is happening in this story? Is Jesus just this man of authority? Is he just a person who heals? Is he just some messenger from God? Who is this Jesus? I want you to see that Jesus goes where he is invited. Jesus recognizes repentance. Jesus sees the critical spirit. And Jesus is the only one who forgives sins. Jesus goes where he's invited. Look at verse 36 with me. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. This is the last person that you would expect Jesus to have dinner with. I mean, think about it. All of the people that Jesus spends time with, and all of the people that are giving Jesus a hard time for his ministry. The Pharisees would be the people that Jesus would be most criticized by. Yet in this moment, we see that a Pharisee invites Jesus to come to his house, and Jesus goes where he's invited. Why would Jesus go where the Pharisee is? Why would Jesus go to this place? Because the question that is on everyone else's heart is on Simon's heart. Who is this Jesus? Who is this Jesus? What is he about? And I find it very encouraging that Jesus goes where he's invited. Jesus goes where he is invited. And I also find it very encouraging that Jesus doesn't give up on the hypocrite. I think sometimes we in the church, we're associated with hypocrites, right? Everybody goes, oh, they're nothing but a bunch of hypocrites in church. This is very encouraging if you've ever heard this, because what it says is Jesus doesn't give up on the hypocrites. So maybe we are, maybe we're not. I'm not saying that we are or we're not. But what I am saying is that Jesus doesn't give up on the hypocrite. And he doesn't give up on the hyper-religious. He doesn't give up on the person who thinks that they have it all together. Jesus will go where he is invited. Not only will he go where he's invited, but he will invite those people to observe him and to watch him. He will invite them, as it says in Psalm 34, to taste and see that the Lord is good. He will invite them to be a part of what he's doing. Yes, he was invited into the Pharisees' house, but in being invited into the Pharisees' house, what Jesus is going to do is he's going to invite the Pharisee to see what matters most to Jesus. What matters most to Jesus, do you think? We have a bunch of things that we think matter in life. How much you make, how many kids you have in your family, where you live, what school you went to. What matters most to Jesus? Well, I think the answer is also given at the end of this story. It's also throughout chapter 7. But at the very end, he says, your faith has saved you. What matters most to Jesus is faith. And what he's inviting Simon to see is he's inviting Simon to see that faith is what impresses Jesus. Faith is what impresses God. But not only does Jesus go where he's invited, Jesus recognizes repentance. Look what happens. Jesus goes to this Pharisee's house, and it says in verse 37, behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment. And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and she kissed his feet and anointed them with this ointment. Jesus recognizes repentance. Jesus is just having a normal dinner party at Simon's house. Everything is going according to Simon's plan. Everything is going great. It was a normal Jewish dinner party. They were sitting semicircle around the table, all of them leaning and reclining to one side. They would kind of lean to one side and their feet back behind them slightly, and then the next person would be over here. So they would kind of have this little semicircle, and they were enjoying dinner. And this would be a dinner party that would be done in the open air, to where as people walked by on the street, they could see who was having dinner in the house. They could see who was there, and they could even walk in and have conversation with who was there. This would be their e-network, if you will. The who's who, to see who is eating at the Pharisees' table. They would be able to just walk by and go, oh, this is the who's who of our day. These are the people that are important in our day because they're reclining at this table or they're reclining at that table. And so they could just walk by and see them and interact with them. So this was something that is a very normal dinner party, but there's something very unordinary that happens in the middle of this dinner party. Number one, a woman walks in to a men's dinner party. This just doesn't happen in Jewish culture. But not only does a woman walk in, a woman who is a sinner walks in. And she begins to weep, and she begins to cry, and she begins to anoint the feet of Jesus. All of a sudden, what is a normal dinner party turns into the strangest thing that these men have ever been a part of. I don't know if you've ever been a part of something where you're just like, everything was normal, and then it just went weird. Have you ever been a part of something like that? It's like you'll never guess what happened next. I was thinking about that this week, and I was remembering whenever I was a new Christian, and I was going to a church with a friend of mine. It was a smaller church, and they do things just a little bit differently there. I'll just say that. And so during the service, the music was great. The preaching was very good. And at the end of the service, when the altar call came, the minister, who was a guest speaker, says, if you would like to have a prophecy spoken over your life, please come forward. And the entire church, unbeknownst to me, I was sitting very close to the front. And so a bunch of people just go to the front. And the person I'm with is going, and I'm like, I really don't know what to do right now. And I remember sitting there, and it was like everything was normal about church until this moment, and then it just kind of went this direction. I was like, what do I do with this? I don't know. Where do I go? How do I handle this? Is it time for me to leave? And so I'm sitting there, and then I start looking around, and I realize I'm the only person who's sitting in this room. Everybody else is standing at the altar. And the pastor was so friendly as to call that out and make that known to me as well. And I ended up going forward. I don't know exactly what happened after that because it was just so odd to me. But that's kind of what happens here. It's like everything is going normal, and then this woman comes in, and it just gets kind of different and strange. And these people are like, what do we do with this? Where do we go with this? And she just begins to weep. This is probably not a quiet cry. We're not told why she's weeping, but as she's weeping, her tears are so much that they begin to wet the feet of Jesus. She's standing up and her tears are hitting his feet. Then she takes that flask of ointment. It's very costly. She begins to pour it over his feet. And she lets down her hair, which would have also been a social no-no in that day. And she begins to wipe his feet with her hair. Now, people have asked me, why did she do this? I really don't know. My guess is, and this is just purely my guess, is that when you're overcome with emotion, sometimes you do things that you wouldn't normally do, and you think kind of crazy. And I think that she is so overwhelmed with emotions that she begins to have this water and this ointment running together, and what am I going to wipe it with? Oh, I have hair. And that's the only thing that I can figure with this. But let's not get distracted by everything that she's doing to miss why she's doing it. She comes humbly to Jesus to offer herself in repentance to him for her sins. She's a sinner, and this would not have been a sinner who is just a person with a bad job. Oh, she's a shepherd. We can't have her over here because she stinks. It wouldn't have been something where, well, she's a tanner of leather. We can't have her over here because of the job that she does and kind of what she uses. It's just unclean. The picture is from Simon's words, Lord, if you only knew what type of woman was touching you, that there's some moral issue in this woman's life. That she's done something morally that is unacceptable in her society. And as she's done this, she has alienated herself. And then she comes to Jesus and she begins to weep and she begins to anoint his feet and she begins to wipe his feet with her hair and kiss his feet. And I was thinking about this. I thought, why is this so important? Well, there's a Jewish story that Luke may or may not have known, but this woman would have known. Of another woman in the Jewish history who was unacceptable to Jewish people. But yet when she was given the command by her mother-in-law, Ruth went to Boaz in Ruth chapter 3. And she laid herself at Boaz's feet. And she said, you are my Redeemer. Cover me in your wings. What's the picture of what this woman is doing? She's going to the nearest kinsman redeemer in Jesus. And she is laying herself at his feet. And she's saying, no one else will have me. I am unclean in every way. I need you to put your wings of forgiveness over me. I need you to cover me and to tell me that I am yours. That's the picture of what she's doing here. This woman desires the Redeemer. She has seen her sins forgiven. She has seen her life changed. And she just needs to have her Redeemer cover her in his wings. But not only is there this woman who's at this party, but there's also the host. Look at what the host does. If you're listening to me, say, I am. I am. Verse 39, now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, I find it interesting. He's talking to himself, and then Jesus addresses him publicly. If you were a prophet, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered and said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he answered, say it, teacher. Jesus tells a parable. It says a certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii, the other owed 50. And when they could not pay the debt, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which one would you think would love him more? Simon answered, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Then turning to the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? How could he miss her? But isn't it amazing how Jesus points her out? I entered your house, you gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. Jesus recognizes the critical spirit. As I just said, it's interesting how many times Jesus perceives something in someone's heart and then answers them publicly. He doesn't just let things slip by when we have a critical heart, a critical spirit. But who is Simon being critical of in this story? He's not being critical of the woman, although she's the cause for his criticism. He's being critical of Jesus. Look what it says. If this man were a prophet, he would have known what sort of woman this is who is touching him. If this man were a prophet, it would be out of the question for him to let her touch him because her sin could somehow or another jump on him. She's got cooties. And that would be the picture of what he's thinking here, is that some kind of sin would attach itself to the prophet, and the prophet needs to deal with the sin. He needs to not let her touch him so that he can deal with the sin. But Jesus answers the question of who is Jesus to the critic, doesn't he? Simon is answering the question in his heart, who is this Jesus, by saying, well, he's not this, he's not this, he's not this. He begins to answer this question out of cynicism and embarrassment rather than out of faith. Who is this Jesus? Sometimes we answer it because we're embarrassed or we're critical, don't we? Rather than humble and trying to live out faith. Jesus' responses are always insightful. What does Jesus do? He tells a story. He looks at Simon and he says, Simon, you're a smart guy. Two money lenders. One owes a big amount, the other owes a small amount. The one who is holding the debt forgives both of them. He says, who loves him more? What it means here is who is more grateful. There isn't actually a word in the Aramaic or the Hebrew that accurately is translated as grateful. Most of them are just translated as love, so that's why the word love is there. But what he's saying is, who's going to be the most grateful for this? And Simon thinks about it for a second, and he goes, well, suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled. And Jesus says, you've judged correctly. Side note here, this has nothing to do with our message, but let me just say it because it's in our text. Oftentimes in church, we're told, judge not. You're not supposed to judge. Don't judge. Don't judge. I find it interesting. Jesus asks people to make judgments sometimes. He says, hey, you make a judgment. What is he saying? He's saying, pick what's the right thing. Jesus doesn't say, judge not, lest you be judged, so that we say, okay, don't judge anybody. Jesus says, judge not, because he doesn't want us to make bad judgments. Because if you finish the rest of that section in Matthew 7, it says, for the measure with which you measure with, it will be measured back to you. And so what he's saying is make sure that your judgments are right judgments. Just a side note there. But Jesus knows the critical spirit. And then Jesus says, you have judged rightly. And then he looks at the woman. He says, how did he miss her? How could he miss her? This is the whole cause of the story. Jesus is like, just so that you know, here's the emphasis. Here's what we need to focus on. Here's where we need to put our eyes. Have you seen this woman? Yes, she's right there. You see her. And then he begins to say, you didn't give me any water for my feet. Now, some of us would think about this and we go, that's kind of gross. They've been walking all day and smelly feet next to somebody else's head. I would appreciate it if somebody were to wash those. It's just kind of a customary thing. They don't actually have to do this in a home, but if you're trying to impress someone in their day, you would have washed their feet. If you're trying to show them that you really care about them and you are really interested in them, you'll wash their feet. And he says, you didn't wash my feet, but with her tears, she has washed my feet and wiped them with her hair. Then he says, you gave me no kiss. And in that time, it would have been customary for men to greet each other, especially men that they really admire and they really appreciate. They would meet each other with a kiss on the cheek. Listen, I don't want this to come back, by the way. But that's how they would do it in that day, is that they would greet each other with a kiss. And Jesus says, you didn't give me a kiss. You didn't recognize me as someone important. But since I have entered, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. Then he says, not only that, but you didn't give me any oil for my head. And again, these are all just things that a good host would do. A host who's trying to impress the person who's come to his dinner party. Who's trying to say, I am just so glad you're here. That they would give them oil to anoint their head with. And he says, you didn't give me any oil for my head, but she has anointed my feet. What Jesus is saying is, Simon, you're just an inconsiderate host. Not you're an evil person, not you're a bad person. You're just an inconsiderate host. But this woman, she saw me. And she saw the need of what had to happen here. And she began to wash my feet. And what was the purpose behind this? To show thankfulness for her debt being forgiven. It says, Jesus says, her sins, which are many. By the way, all the people in the room were probably counting up her sins. This one, this one, this one, this one. Her sins, which everybody in the room knows are many, are forgiven. Not as a result of what she does here, by the way. It's not the action that saves her. It's the action that shows that she's saved. Not by works that any man should boast. Listen, the gift of God. By grace, you have been saved. That's what it says in Ephesians chapter 2. Also, James tells us and reminds us in his letter that faith without works is dead faith. And so what's the picture of this woman? The picture of this woman is that her faith is alive. And the reason that we know this is because she's been forgiven so much. She acts out of her faith in God, and she does something extravagant, and she becomes the center of attention in another person's dinner party. Isn't that just what you want from your dinner party? Somebody else to become the center of attention when you invited the guest. But Jesus points out that this woman, her sins are forgiven. Why? Because she was so grateful that Jesus would take the time to redeem her. Why is this story important to us? Who is this Jesus? Well, he's the one who forgives sins. Look what it says in verse 48. And Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. Verse 49. Those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Who is this man who is forgiving sins? Listen, there are a lot of people who have come to Jesus in his life, and they've come to him because he has authority. They've come to him because he's fed them. They've come to him because he has healed them. They've come to him for a lot of different reasons. But what is important for us to see is that Jesus, who is this Jesus? He is the only one who can forgive your sins. Peter says that there is no other name by which men can be saved of their sins in the name of Jesus. See, a lot of people in our day, they come to Jesus for a lot of other reasons, don't they? They come to Jesus because, you know what, coming to church is a great network. You can get to know a lot of different people there. It's a great support system. You know, it's a great concert once a week. There's a lot of help that comes from church. You know, you can learn how to do a lot of good things. But do you want to know why we don't have a lot of people who are like this woman? Because every once in a while you come across one. You come across someone who knows their sin and they know that it's forgiven. And you don't have to tell them why to come to church. They come to church because they are thankful for Jesus. They worship not because the music is great. However, guys, it's got to be good. We want it to be good. And we do a good job of that here, I think. But they worship because it's not about the music. It's about the Savior who saved. Amen. And I think sometimes the reason why we don't give like we ought to give is because we don't know how much He has actually done in our lives. We're not aware. We're kind of like Simon. He's just completely clueless to what Jesus can do for him. We go to church with all of these other things on our mind and on our heart, but the reality is He has saved you and He has cleansed you, and you stand before God without a veil in between you and Him, and you speak freely to the God of the universe as a result of Jesus Christ. You stand completely righteous. Why is the story important for us? Because I think that every once in a while, we just need to get extravagant with Jesus. Because He got extravagant with us. Because 2,000 years ago on a hill, He died on a cross and He shed His blood, all of His blood, so that you and I could live forever in eternity. Church, don't miss who this Jesus is. Don't miss it. Because He is the only one who forgives sins. Who is Jesus to you? I hope that He is the one who's forgiven you. I hope that He's the one that you look at and you go, I'm willing to be extravagant and have everybody turn their head because it doesn't matter about me. It